Welcome. I am Dr. Carolyn Boston Love of Jacksonville, Florida, and I am surrounded with family and friends called the Against All Odds family. We are a team of co-authors who have come together to put a portion of our life story in print in the book called Against All Odds. If you have not gotten your copy of this, you do not want to miss it. Get your copy right away, because each of us have shared a portion of our lives that will give you the pain, the pressure, the problem, and then some strategies that we used to move and matriculate our lives forward. I don't know anybody who's not had pain, has not encountered a loss or grief of any kind. That is a part of life. And so our gathering today, and even if you're listening on the replay, it's all about offering hope during the holidays. And we hope to pass on to you holiday resilience, and that you will take portions of what is said and what you experienced today, and along with getting your copy of this book, and let's move forward. We pray that this will be a better holiday season. Holidays are usually joyful times for most people. This is a time to celebrate and just get all into the holidays. But there are some of us who've had challenges in our lives that make it very, very difficult to get into a celebratory mode during the holiday seasons. These holidays will never be erased off of the calendar, but we hope that our presence with you will provide some hope, some forwardness, and a light in your dark place that you can say, there is hope for me. And so holiday resilience and coping with grief and loss and bereavement during this part of the holiday season, we felt it was important to take some time just to spend together as a community to address this area. Some people just go on over it because it may not have impacted their lives, but I don't know about you. I've had some heavy impacts in the area of loss and grief and dealing with the bereavement portion of it. And I'm grateful that somebody took the time to spend a few minutes with me to let me know that there was life beyond this. It did not take it away, but it gave me a track, a place for me to look towards and move forward. So today, a few of the authors from the Against All Odds book here, they're with us today. And so I'm going to ask Kimberly if she'll introduce herself and tell you what chapter she is in the book, then Jude, then Dr. O, and then Kelly Combat. I love saying your name, Kelly. I could just pronounce one of the, no, I want to say the whole thing, Kelly Combat. That speaks volumes. And then Dr. Hunt, my daughter, is here with us today, and let's just have conversation. Okay, Kimberly. Kim.
Thank you so much, Dr. Love. It is such a pleasure to be here. And my name is Kimberly B. Lewis, and I am chapter 16 in the Against All Odds book. And the name or the title of the chapter is A Diamond Under Pressure. And so we all have pressure in our lives. But, you know, if you are a true diamond, you are resilient. And we are resilient. We just have to sometimes scratch that diamond a little bit, and kind of polish it up a little bit so that we can remind ourselves. And that's why I never take this off. This is a diamond that came from South Africa, which is where my name came from the Kimberly Diamond Mines. And I always wear this, and it reminds me of the strength of my parents in particular. It reminds me of my story. It reminds me of my resilience, and that, you can't destroy a diamond. Even if you crush it, it's still a diamond. It may be diamond dust, but it's still a diamond. And so I hope to share some of that with you all today.
Thank you, and welcome. Jude?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Jude Monteserato. My chapter is number 2. The Possibility of New Beginnings is the title. And it truly was the possibility of new beginnings after the loss and experiencing the loss of my husband on September 11th, 2001.
Mm,
And
mm,
first, I didn't believe that there were going to be any possibility. And I stayed in the darkness, and I stayed in the unhealthiness until I made a choice that I had to thrive in life again. And gradually I made the steps and found the tools to navigate through this devastating time. And we all have those choices. We all experience grief and devastation and trauma, but it is during those times that we feel our resilience, our strength, our courage to persevere and shine our true light. So thank you.
Thank you, Jude. Oh,
Pleasure.
you've got to read these stories. I tell you, you cannot not believe the details in a brief chapter that will give you life-changing tips. It's a prescription for whatever that ails you. We have authors from everywhere, and it's just good that we've come together for such a time as this. Dr. Obiami, welcome.
Welcome, everyone. I am Dr. Obiama, and my chapter is titled 16, A Symphony of Survival. I am in chapter 18, and so loss, grief, all the things in between, what do you do afterwards, right? And so you have to choose yourself and you have to breathe because you can't put the oxygen on no one else if you're suffocating. And so you must have to be a first partaker of the oxygen that you wish to give out.
Wow, that sums it up. Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate you being here with us today. Kelly Combat.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kelly Combat, and I do get a lot of jokes on that. It is my married name. And my chapter it's number 11. So I don't say chapter 11, I say number 11.
Number.
Just not to put it out there. If you get it,
Okay.
you get it. And so it is called Immortal Combat. Everything I do has to do with combat. So podcast, career combat, chapter is Immortal Combat. And the reason why I thought about that, because when I was about 16 years old, I had a profound loss. It was the first of many, many, many losses in my life, where I lost my father while he was teaching me to swim. And when I think about all the profound loss I've had in my life, that is the quintessential essence of what shaped the rest of my life, because I don't look at any day as, oh, I've got forever. Every single day, I make the most of it, because I am now older than what he was when he passed away. So that's what makes me want to do it all. I take it all on, and I encourage you all to do the same. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm Carolyn Love, and I've had my share of losses. I've had to deal with grief, and I've had to deal with loss in my personal life and in so many ways. And it took me a while to really realize that the level of help that I needed, that number one, I could not give it to myself. I needed professional help to help me get to a better understanding. And I never realized that I couldn't heal in a place that I had not been revealed where my pain was coming from. And so I'm hoping that today what is said and what is done will help you have a better understanding of what grief and loss and bereavement is all about, and then the different types of grief and the different types of losses, and just some familiar basic stages that come along with them. Those things, just the knowledge and the awareness is a gift that helps you to begin to recognize what it is. And then you can begin to have a plan or strategy to move forward. And so I became later in life, after spending years in education and academic administration. I was a middle school and elementary school principal, a district level trainer, beginning teachers, working with professional development. So I always worked with either children or adults. I never had a chance to deal with senior life and senior lifestyles, and did not have a whole lot of dealings with deaths. And later on, I went back to school to become a national registered chaplain. And in my chaplaincy 2-year certification, my intern, 9-month intern assignment assigned me to a hospice program. So you've got children and life in its finest and well-being and just the best of everything, grooming and growing and building foundation and developing and training others. That was my lane. But this new level of training shifted me into the awareness of end-of-life care. And I was startled by some of the things that was going on around me and within me that I had never recognized as the effects of losses that had come in my life. So just to begin with, and I certified to become a chaplain, and my area of expertise is hospice care, end of life care, grief and grief bereavement. So those areas, that's where I'm certified in as a chaplain. But grief is a part of life. If I can't say anything else, it's a part of life. It's a state of life. It's a stage and a place of life. And when you come upon grief, grief is the experience of coping with a loss. And there are so many levels of losses. Every loss is not a loved one or a family member. Losses come in a wide variety and a plethora of things. So whether your grief is from the loss of a family member, a loss of a friend, a partner, a child, a sibling, you name it, and loss is a loss. When there's been a community loss within a neighborhood, from natural disasters, from things that happen in our environment, when sometimes folk will begin to grieve when you are moving from your youth into further adult years, and your health and your vitality. The things that cause us to grieve may not always be buried in a cemetery. And it is just as valuable that we address it as it is addressing the loss of an actual person. We grieve the loss of things. Some of us have grieved the loss of jobs and careers and financial statuses and marriages and divorces and friendships and association, the loss of dreams, the loss of goals. There are so many areas, the loss of items. And Kim said that she holds on to that diamond. There are those who have lost themselves and are lost those things that are meaningful to them. And the grief of the loss has surfaced, but sometimes we don't know how to identify it and locate it. So if we can just start with, grief is the loss of something or someone or a place that you valued. And then Grief is the consequence of what you love. For folks that move on and pass on, or things that you lose, or things that go away, when you love something, when you love someone, when something has been fulfilling to you and it's no longer there, whether it's a person, a place, or a thing, grief is real. And so understanding that it's not a forever place, we go through different stages and phases of grief, but grief is a part of real life. And one of the nurses that was on with us, one of the authors last night, Delisa, said, we were talking about her t-shirt she had on, and it had the rhythm of heartbeat because she works with heart surgery. And I said to her, I said, we none want to go through the ups and downs of life. But if ever life is a flat line for us, life is over. So grief is a part of the ups and downs that we have to learn how to navigate. We cannot ignore them. We cannot. Life changes. And when life changes, there are different types of grief that we go through. And it's really compounded even more when holidays and days of remembrance and special days and special events and certain things causes that grief to rise up once again. And when sometimes we think that we're totally over it, oh, I'm well, I'm good. Just the least little thing could come back and jar your remembrance. And so in your toolkit called life, you've got to have some strategies, some tools that when this happened, I am able to grasp whatever that moment is. I cannot ignore it. I cannot act as if it's not going on because it is affecting me. And I said to the group last night, have you ever had times when you felt tired, not so much physically out here, but you were tired in here? You were like, this is too much. I don't know how much more I can take. I'm overwhelmed with, and in here you were so tired. Most times, if we look at the mental health and the mental health crisis, most things can be traced back to one of the various types of grief. And so before the panel come, I just want to give you a few of those types of grief so that we are mindful. We are aware that you're not losing it. It's a moment of grief that you've encountered, and that's your place to start healing and moving forward from. There's always normal grief. that identifies with the loss of something or someone. It's just normal grief when there is a loss. But then before there is loss, many times you're sitting as, especially caregivers, and there's a side of grief called anticipatory grief. That means you are watching someone or something decline. And on the sideline, you are saying, I know where this is headed. So you begin to grieve before the actual loss or death takes place. Anticipatory grief is very real. It is very forth and forward pointing because you already know what will possibly happen. You're just waiting for it to happen. And anticipatory grief takes a toll. I mean, a tremendous toll on those that are standing on the sideline, watching and waiting. And so you start grieving before the loss or before the death. Is it anyone that ever had where you on the sideline watching, seeing the direction that it was headed in, and you begin to feel the loss before the loss? That's anticipatory grief. And anticipatory grief and any kind of grief can lead to what you call complicated grief. Complicated grief occurs when the grieving process uh, does not move the way you thought it was going to move. And it's sometimes long standing, it's delayed. You thought you were over with it, and then here comes something else. And complicated grief can be prolonged. So, not getting to the root of that will even make it be more compiled and more compressed. And when it blows up, it just complicates so many other areas in our lives. That's complicated grief. Then it's chronic grief, where you've just decided, I can't get over it. I cannot get past this. The more I try, the more it intensifies. That's what happens with chronic grief. It intensifies. It will sit, it will be dormant for a little while, and then something will come along and trigger it. And it's like you go back to point one and you have to start working your way back up. That's what happens when it's chronic grief. And then there's sometimes delayed grief, that you were so engaged when things were going on that you didn't take the time to grieve. And then at a later date, it hits you, it comes up, and it was delayed, but grief will eventually show up and you'll begin to feel the effects of it. It could be a long time, it could be months, it could be weeks, it could be days, it could be years, but grief will always come back for you to deal with it. So delaying it doesn't send it away, it doesn't erase it. All right. Then there's distorted grief that appears to be one thing, but it is actually grief in operation in our lives, in our minds, in our environment, in our communities. It can come up in distorted fashion, but sometimes, most times, the bottom line is it's grief. And any of the above that I've mentioned could take you into a place of cumulative grief, where you've got this type plus this type on top of this type, and you've got all of them to deal with. Cumulative grief. So we have to take the time to deal with it. And dealing with grief is your responsibility. You can never wait for somebody to come and take care of it for you. It's your responsibility. When we're dealing with grief, there's a part of grief called secondary loss. You can lose something or someone later. And if you've never dealt with the initial loss that had happened at a former time, even with a different situation, then the secondary loss will trigger the first loss, and you've got two losses working at the same time. So grief is not something that we should play with or take lightly. And there are those of us who deal with disenfranchised grief, which is grief that you feel to yourself, this is something that is meaningful to me. It's a loss. I'm hurting. I may not be able to explain to others how much this hurt, but disenfranchised grief means it's meaningful to you, but there are others that may not deem that this is something that you should even grieve. You have to really be careful with this one. Disenfranchised. Some people think the grief or the loss of a pet, oh, that's insignificant. That was just a pet. That was just an animal. That's your family member. That's a heartbeat in your household. Oh, it was just a house. You could get another house. Oh, it was just a job. You can get another job. Oh, that was just your significant other. You didn't have real ties to that. You should not be grieving. Let no one dictate to you what you should or who you should or how you should grieve. So that disenfranchised, I can't give you that much power and space in my life, in my heart, and in my emotions, in my behaviors, that you don't value what I value is a loss to me. And sometimes we have to go back and press the rewind button and say to ourselves, I had a loss, but I skipped over it to keep moving, or I didn't know how to handle that because it was not normal, it was not typical. A loss is a loss, and grief is associated with loss. And then there are the traumatic griefs. I mean, traumatic griefs that something you did not expect all of a sudden, and that there it was, and you had to pick up the pieces of life and move with it. You can't heal from that you don't know how to reveal it and see, where am I? Something somewhere in here is just not moving in the right direction, and I need help. And that's for you to recognize that you need help. But this panel, and there are professionals around the country, persons who train to help us walk through different types of times and season and stages and phases of grief in our life. And then I'm going to leave at this last one, but there are so many more. Collective grief. Collective grief is when something happens in a community, something happens in a region, something happens in a state. I am from Florida. So collectively, when it's storm season and the whole city, the whole community is devastated because of the floods or the rains or the loss or the wind. So collectively, everybody in that area needs grief. Somebody has to step forward. There's a school tragedy or there's a community tragedy. Those things, collective pools of grief where we all will need help at one time. So I thought I would give you just a few of those to just help to foster thinking and looking in the direction of life. What I'm feeling is not necessarily buried in a cemetery. It's something that I don't have anymore, and I can't go back to it. And I never brought in resolve to myself. And some folk are able to go back on and say, oh, you'll be okay. Or give yourself a couple of weeks, or you've been at this 3 months, you should be over it. Who made you judge and jury and giving you the right to say how long it will take? We are all different. And so we all go through some basic stages with grief. And there are 5 basic stages. Though the ones that I gave you were the types of grief, but these are the stages of grief. And usually the first part of dealing with the stages of grief is denial. I can't believe that it happened. Oh my goodness, I cannot. Oh my goodness. Having difficulty accepting that the loss is real. It could be the day of, it could be 3 months later, 3 years later. That's just one of the stages of grief. The second and one of the most prominent stages is anger. You can just get angry at a multiplicity of things. What happened, why it happened, who it happened to. You don't really have any answers to resolve it. It's just like, why me? Why this? Why? You go through that anger. I'm angry because it happened. I'm angry because I didn't have a chance to bring proper closure. I'm angry because anger is a part of grief. And then there's, hold on, let me get to the next page. Bargaining. If I had done this, if I had said this, if I had been there, if I had made that phone call, you begin to bargain what you could have done, what might have been different if you had done certain things. It's okay to have those thoughts. It's okay to have those feelings, because that's a part of you moving through the stages. You're going to have those questions about what could I have done different. You try to bargain and barter, but it's really too late. But go ahead and go through it, because you will realize that it has happened and I cannot change it. That's usually when this next stage and phase come in, and that's depression. Depression fuels grief. And if we're not able to distinguish the oppression and depression of grief, then we'll begin to become used to it, and it will become our new normal. And that is not healthy for us. And then the last stage of grief is acceptance. When you finally and eventually come to the point that you accept the reality of the loss. That doesn't mean you agree with it. That doesn't mean you can change anything. And that's not an instant. You usually gradually get to that place where you can accept the reality. Yes, it has happened. And you'll still have those I can't believe it happened moments. So I'm going to pause for a moment and just let our panel add to the conversation.
Well, I'll start off by saying that was a lot.
Yeah.
I had no idea that there was all of those variations of grief. While as I heard you explain them, I identified with over half of them, because you don't know what you don't know. And so I'm like, as I listened to you, I realized so many times in my life I was grieving, but because I was numb,
Mhm.
I didn't know I was grieving. And so because I didn't know I was grieving, and because I didn't even know that I was numb, I didn't have compassion for other people that was grieving.
Mm.
I didn't have empathy for other people that experienced loss, because I didn't realize that I was numb. I didn't realize that I didn't have the ability to feel comfort or even be present for someone else. So as I listened to you describe all of those variations, it was so many ahas, that went off. And so all of I recently experienced, a loss of a loved one, and everyone in my community has been checking on me because I'm the strong one. And
Mhm.
I usually do not cry, but this one was different.
That's it.
But it wasn't different from the perspective of I lost the love of my life. It was, I'm grieving for my children. I'm grieving because it's a real loss, like period.
Mhm.
And it's just very different. It's just very different. And so I have been responsible for the funeral, the finances, the eulogy, the service, and all the things for my uncles and for my great grandmother and for all these other people. But I didn't cry. Like I had nothing. I just did what I needed to do, and I was very strong for everyone else. And like I never fell apart. I never, any of that. But this one is different.
Mm.
I'm not falling apart, but I feel it, and I've never felt like this
Mhm.
for any other person that was very close to me that has went on and left. Now, when you talk about relationships and jobs, I've grieved relationships and jobs, but not like this. This is very different.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I've had to anchor myself in Colossians 3 and 7 to 12 has become my anchor during this time, just understanding that what you focus on
Mhm.
is the energy that you possess. And so I can choose to be sad, or I can embrace how I feel and what I feel and get anchored in the strength of the Lord and keep it moving, right? So I'm not numb. I recognize that this is real. This is a real loss. Sadness is present, but I'm not allowing it to paralyze me.
Great. Wow. Not allowing it to paralyze you. Thank you so much for just sharing and being transparent with us. And all of our prayers have been with you since we got the announcement. And I'm grateful that you showed up today. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Bless you. Bless you. Bless you. Someone else.
I can jump in.
Okay.
So I will say, on the same theme of this is different, there's been so much loss in my life. It is a constant, like you said, it is a constant. I loved the education that you just provided for all of us. A lot of things I did not know. Because if you name it, you can claim it. Like, if you know what it is,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, oh, it's so validating.
Mm-hmm.
What I will say is, I'm a certified coach, and I
Mm-hmm.
focus on a lot of things: presenting with confidence, uh, inclusive leadership, career coaching, imposter syndrome, you name it, I coach on it. And what I will say is that I didn't set myself up for success a couple of weeks ago. So I'm not going to go into politics,
Mm-hmm.
but I will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I did not, I did it backwards. So I was off on Tuesday. I had a half a day Monday, off on Tuesday, full of energy. And then it happened. The profoundness of the loss, I did not want to get out of bed. And I looked at my calendar, and I was on from 7 a.m. until 8:30 p.m., which is not a typical day for me.
Mm-hmm.
I had board meetings, I had all kinds of stuff the next day. And I was like, how am I going to do this? And so I bring up that kind of grief
Yes.
because I think a lot of people are going through it. I miss a lot of what I had, the joy of about what a lot of us had for a brief moment there. And yet and still I had to be brave and come to coaching calls, and people
That's
wanted to show up. My clients wanted to show up and talk about it. I don't.
mm-hmm.
I don't want to talk about it. So I just wanted to put that out there in terms of that kind of grief, because there are things you can do about it. What I did, this thing here, my phone,
Mm-hmm.
I did a block and tackle move. I blocked
Mm-hmm.
the alerts. I'm blocking the content, certain kinds of content that I get on a lot of different things. And I just wanted to share that with all of you, that you're right. Grief can come in a whole lot of different ways.
Oh, yes. And coming through the end of a political year. And that was an area we talked about last night. Election grief, political grief. It impacted us in tremendous ways. And to just go past it as if you didn't feel what you felt one way or the other, that's a disservice to ourselves. So I wrote that down, the block and tackle move, Cali Combat. I got that. I got
The
that.
Heisman,
The
you know, it's the
Gotcha.
Heisman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. Jude.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. Excuse me. And thank you, Dr. Obiama, for sharing from your heart. And thank you for being here. And Kelly, thank you for bringing in another piece of grief as well. And as you were speaking, Dr. Carolyn, I related to all of these different types of grief. I've had a lot of grief in my life. And there's so much that I would like to say about all of this, but one thing, well, a few things. One, the first is when Dr. Oyama said that not allowing it to paralyze me.
Mhm.
Because after John died on 9/11, it paralyzed me for a very, very, very long time until I chose to start feeling and navigating it and to heal from it and healing from it, right? I feel grief isn't, okay, I'm good, I'm healed. I feel it's a lifelong process. And certain things can trigger even after 21 years of his loss, of his death. So not allowing it to paralyze me, because recently I live here now in Western North Carolina
Mhm.
and just experienced Hurricane Helene.
Mhm.
And 2 weeks, it paralyzed me. I took on the grief of the community. We're safe, thankfully, me, my husband, and my dog, and the house is safe. But there is vast loss here on so many levels, right? Properties, people, and it paralyzed me for 2 weeks. And I chose again, after 2 weeks, that I cannot let this paralyze me for that long again, that I have the tools in my toolbox and to start using them to begin my healing process so that I have the capacity to help others navigate through this time. And that's exactly what I chose to do and what I did. And some of those tools were journaling and, of course, doing some movement in my body, whether it was my yoga practice or working out or being out in nature. Those are just a couple of what, of course, prayer
Mhm.
I leaned into. And one other thing I just want to mention is what I learned when I was navigating my healing process through grief, because I had much loss in my life prior to that, but it was, I never knew how to deal with it. I pushed it aside, right? You take off a week from work, you attend the funeral, and everybody shares their condolences. And the next thing I realized, I'm back in my life, right? So when John died and realizing what I had to do and everything I was feeling brought up a lot. But I also realized that I lost him, I lost myself, I lost the relationship we had. I lost the life that we had planned together. So there's those pieces of grief that continue and show up, that there's also that healing to go through. So thank you so much. I am so grateful for being here. I feel in my heart, this is so needed, so needed. It's not discussed enough in society and community, and it's so needed to support each other at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jude. Thank you, each one of you for sharing your heart and being transparent and letting those who are with us and then those that will play the replays later on that what you're feeling is real. And that state of numbness, Dr. Obiami, that numbness, if we don't realize what we need to do with that, it will become another stage or type of grief, which is called mask grief. You just put a mask on and you just wear it. Somewhere down on the inside of us, our connection to heaven is saying, let me help you. I'll be your strength. I'll be your life. Let me breathe on. Let me help you. Let And then you may have a person, and I'm not saying when you're in a state like this that you just open yourself up to any and everybody. There are some folk who are not professionally trained to help you in situations. And you also, in your toolkit, have to prepare yourself for crazy things that people say when they feel like they just need to say something to you. You're thinking, well, why would you say that? Why would you suggest that? Why would you mention that? That's a part of our toolkit too. Do not be surprised by what people will suggest to you and what people will recommend to you and what people will advise you of. You're already in a vulnerable state. And then you've got someone that says, give yourself 2 weeks and girl, move on. Duh. I am trying to find me again. I'm trying to wrap my mind around what my new normal consists of. And you're putting a time frame on it. You told me I have 2 weeks to get over. I don't know what to do with me. That is a real place. And
Dr. Love,
yes,
if I could interject
yes,
and just say this, that I probably was that person that was saying crazy stuff to people, because for me, I felt like everybody has an exit date. So why you mad? Like, I was so unattached and just was not connected to anyone's individual journey. And also, all of the points that you raised, I think, are so important, because I would say to you, if I had not experienced this loss, I probably would still say stupid stuff. No, I'm just being honest, because the way that historically I processed death, I didn't. I just didn't. And so, because I was able to bounce back and move on and go back to work, like, I mean, I'm back to work now, but it's different. And also, I will say this, because the last 5 years specifically, I have been doing my own personal development and really leaning into my own healing and getting to the root and to the core of all of my past trauma. I think that has also opened me up to a place where I now can feel and be empathetic and not be judgmental, because as I listen to you, I'm telling you, I know that if it had not been for this experience, I would really be like, girl, get yourself up, get yourself together, and just kind of peruse, or, but listening to you and just realizing who I was. Right, who I was and who I was not to people who have had losses in the past around me. I just was so disconnected. But I'm grateful that I am present, I can feel, and I also feel a sense of compassion that I've never felt before. So that the hardness is no longer there. It's like, okay, this is a new place for me. So now how can I be different and more supportive for other people, because I didn't know how to do that before. So this didn't just happen to me, it happened for me.
Well, that's good. That's good. That's good.
I
Thank you.
want to chime in too, very much like Dr. Obioma. I am the quote unquote strong one, the family. And so, I buried my sister, I buried my brother. And when I say I handled all of the things for my sister and my brother and my parents, who died 6 months apart. And still working through, then had aunts and uncles and working through all the probate stuff. And my mom has been gone since 2020. And you know, I can remember, you know, my grandfather always saying that, you know, you handle business first and you cry later.
Mhm, mhm.
And so that always stuck in my mind. It's like, okay, we got to clean out this house. We got to do this. We got to do that. We got to da, 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 da. We got to probate. We got to do all the things that have to be done. And I would put grief on a shelf,
Yes.
you know, and deal with it later. And it would come, but I would deal with it later, and I would deal with it in little spurts,
Mhm,
little
mhm.
spurts. Um, but the thing that was different, I think, is something that happened over 18, almost 19 years ago when I got divorced. And that was such a traumatic experience. All of the types of loss and grief that you talk about, I experienced because we had been married for 18 years. And so, you know, it was that anticipatory because it was an up and down
Mhm,
marriage.
mhm,
So it
mhm.
was anticipatory, but it was delayed and all of those things that came
Ah,
in. And when it actually happened, I thought, you know, there's no way that I can survive this. I knew I had to,
mhm.
but a part of me didn't even want to,
Right.
you know, and so, you know, I had to really unpack a
Mhm,
lot of those emotions. And like Dr. Obiama is saying now, really work on myself and gain some tools that I needed that continue to help me to this day. And so you know, I'm a researcher, I'm a studier, I'm a reader. And so the first thing I did was try to find, you know, books and things that I could read that would resonate with what I was going through. And one of the things that actually a counselor, a Christian counselor, advised me, which I couldn't understand why he wanted me to read this because I wasn't the one who had the problem. You know, it was during the divorce process, is love is a choice.
mhm.
And it's about it's a very old book, but it really is about codependency. And I didn't see that I was codependent
That's right.
until I read it. God spoke to me and said, go get that book. A year later, go get that book. And I got it off the shelf, and it's like the veil came off my eyes and I saw it. And that really began the healing journey for me to realize that love is a choice and I can choose it or not choose it, how I handle it and how I handle my emotions around it, and the loss of that love, the loss of that relationship is also my choice.
Mhm, mhm.
And so, you know, I use those tools even to this day of researching and reading. I remember the very first major holiday, which was Thanksgiving, coming up after the divorce. My extended family, we had planned a cruise during Thanksgiving week. That was the best thing in the world that we
Mm,
could have done for me and my children because it was so different from the norm that we
mhm.
forgot it was even Thanksgiving. You know, we were having steak on thing. We didn't have any turkey. We had steak or something like that, you know. And it was just, even for my kids, and they were young at the time, was really healing for them not to be in the same situation, sitting
Right.
around the table like we always had been, and missing a person at the table.
Mm,
So that's another tool. You know, take yourself out of your norm and give
mm.
yourself something a little bit different so that you're not sitting there, woulda, shoulda, coulda,
Right.
thinking about how things had been or should be, you know, had that person not left or that relationship not left or that job not left. Take yourself out and do something a little bit different.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. There's life after grief because grief is a part of life and grief is the consequence of love. May not love it like you used to love it, may not love it like it was at the beginning, but when it is final and the loss is present, love begin to say, well, what was this? What am I going to do now? Well, it's amazing. And so I set this platform so that we could just have some real talk for real people. And I pray that after this, you'll send others to the YouTube and let them hear it. And then we have a session next Monday at 7 p.m. in an hour. You cannot resolve everything, but I believe that an eye opener, just to peep in and get a little bit more aware of what's really going on, is a part of what my assignment and what I'm called to do. And then even as we take the book and read the excerpts from each person's life and story, and understand how the pain, and Dr. Obiama,
Obiama.
Obi, well, oh, I'm mixing up some, I'm making up a name. How did you say that? You said it was not to you, but it was for you.
Right. It was not happening to me. It was happening for me.
Ah, okay.
Right. It was happening. And so it's the way in which we look at everything.
Mhm,
Right. And I'm really learning that more and more. It's all in how we see it. And then it's the story that we tell around it, right? And
mhm.
so our words are so powerful, and we know the scripture that says life and death is in the power of the tongue, but we really don't always grasp exactly what that means. And so our season in anything is determined by what we
What you
say.
say. That's right.
Right. And so it's not to not acknowledge what you're going through. Again, it's to not allow what you're going through to keep you paralyzed. And I have to share this one thing with you guys, and then I'm gonna be quiet. But I want to share this because this is a tool, this is an anchor that it just hit me differently. You know how you read something and it's always been there, but then when life shows up, it hits you differently. And
Mhm.
so I was reading this and I just was like, wow, this is really interesting. And so I just want to share this with you guys again. It is Colossians 3, and it says that we must put on the wardrobe. We must put on the wardrobe that God has, set before us. And I was like, wardrobe, that's a different way of looking at things, right? And so the wardrobe was kindness and meekness, and it was love. And so as I began to think about it in my own situation, it's like, okay, what does that look like? When I brush my teeth, I need to brush my teeth and my tongue with this word.
Mm,
When I'm washing my face, I need to wash my face with this word.
mm,
When I'm washing my body, I have to cleanse my body with this word, because as I am thinking on these things, I have to think on these things in real
mhm,
time and
mhm.
not think on the things that's not going to help me to move forward, not think on these things that are a tragedy. So even in this time, because this time is different, I decided to, every time I begin to get overwhelmed with this loss, I begin to focus on gratitude and the thanksgiving of, it could have been so much worse, but what can I be thankful for? I can be thankful for the relationship. I can be thankful for the lessons. I can be thankful for the life. I can be thankful for the legacy. So I begin to celebrate. And as I begin to celebrate, the sadness went from sadness to joy. The sorrow went to happiness, because I understood that when I changed my focus, my energy changed.
Yes,
All
yes.
right, I'm gonna stop
Come on
right
with it
there.
now.
Just
Preach,
like
preach.
Free
I
yourself.
I
Yes.
just, because here's the thing. When we clothe ourselves in love, it says that love in the Message version is the all-purpose garment.
Mm, mm,
Mm,
mm,
It
mm.
is the all-purpose garment. But here's the thing, when we, regardless of what stage, what phase of grief that we find ourselves in, if we're not loving ourselves, and how do we love ourselves? Because there are dimensions when you says love is a choice. Well, whose love? because we can choose the world's love, we can choose Arrow's love, we can choose all these different forms of love. But when we step into agape love, the unconditional love, and we realize that staying paralyzed, staying stuck and stagnant is not agape love, because agape love moves you forward. All right.
Well, okay, here we go. Good information. Good information. I love it. This is how we grow forward. Some things are hard conversations, but we just have to have them. And this training and this studying and this preparing to be an end of life coach to help patients as well as caregivers and family literally changed my life, because I was so busy being an educator, and it's putting a foundation in, working on the hierarchy of knowledge and learning it. Hey, slow down. There's a real life out there. And you're trying to get information into a wounded and a broken package, whether it was the adults, the children, the family, the community. I believe Holy Spirit says, slow down, hold on. Let's have a course correction. You're going to need to make a U-turn and go back. But when I send you back, I would have made a change in you. So then you will really understand the needs of the community. It's more than the academic success that you've worked towards. It's life success. And you cannot miss that missing ingredient. And so I'm for the better. And I'm very fulfilled in this part or portion of the work that I'm called to do, because I know how long I went without it, without understanding, without any inclination. Grief, that's what happens when something happens. I didn't realize I was in the middle of multiple grief situations. And that's why I was acting the way I was acting, because, you just become numb, like next. And so we do what we do. Thank you so much for being on this panel today. Thank you for being a part of this intimate conversation. And I just believe that those that are here in our listening audience, those that will play the replay, those that will come later on, and even those that will follow these two sessions with next Monday's session, will be impacted for the rest of their life. I'm at a point in my life where I'm not at a place where I'm trying to impress people. If I don't make an impact, I've not done anything. And so it's all about the impact in this season of my life. I've been through too much hurt and pain not to impact the pain that others are going through. So together, we have done some great things today. Thank you, Dr. Hunt, for being with us. Thank you, Dr. Williams, for being with us. Thank you, Jude. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Dr. Obiama. Did I get it right? I was closer, right? Okay. Thank you, Kristen, for doing the work in the background. Dr. Hunt, you came on. You have something to say?
No, just wanted you to know I was still here.
Oh, these children that you birthed, these children of mine. All
Carol,
right.
Just because you're on the team meeting don't mean people stop coming to your door. So.
Right. That's what happens when you're the director. All right. Have a great rest of the day. The replay will be up on YouTube. And I won't need to say to you all to get your copies of the book. You have your copies of the book. Thank you so much. And let's continue to pray one for another. And sis, our prayers are with you.
I
all
feel it.
the way around.
Mm-hmm.
We love you. Thank you for showing up today.
Yes.
All right. We out of here. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay. And there's that. Thank you, Kristen.
Chrissy face.
Christopher taking a nap. Christian. Oh,
With
see.
some stuff in the chat.
Okay. All right. Thank you, baby, for showing up. You going back to work?
I'm still here.
Yeah, you didn't even stop, did you? Okay.
Mm.
All
All
right.
right.
All right. Love y'all. Thanks.
Love you too. See y'all.
Okay. Bye-bye.